So, I'm your SS teacher, Suman Bhatia, and today I'm going to start with the part 2 section of the chapter number 2 of history, standard 7, New Kings and Kingdom. So, students, already in part 1, we have studied about how the new dynasties emerged in the Indian subcontinent. We learned about the Rashtrakuta kings, we learned about the Palas, the Chamana rulers, the Gujara Pratiharas, and how they were struggling to capture the valleys of Kanauj and Ganga valleys, and how they always continuously try to expand their kingdoms. So today, the topic for our part 2 is going to be concentrated on one larger empire that existed in the southern part of the Indian subcontinent, the Cholas dynasty. So let's focus on the topic, having a closer look on the Cholas empire. So basically, how did Cholas rise to power? So there was a minor chiefly family called Muttarayar in the Kaveri Delta region. They were the subordinates to the Palwa kings of Kanchipuram. The king called Vijayala from Urayur captured the Kaveri Delta region from the hands of the Muttarayar in the middle of the 9th century. And he built a town called Tanjavur and a temple of goddess Nisum Basudini there. So in the region of this Kaveri Delta, these two big religious centers or temples were built. So come on, let's move towards the topic. So students, here on the screen, you can see the map, the southern part of our country. Here, the orange color, you can see that this is the kingdom of the Cholas, and it has been kept on fluctuating because the empires continuously expanded, tried to expand their kingdoms, and later on they were opposed by the other kings from the other side. So in this way on the screen you can see the Chola kingdom and its neighboring areas, that is the Chalukyas and Kalinga kings, and in the southern part you can see the Cholas. Now we will see the successor of Vijayalaya conquered neighboring regions and expanded the kingdom. So after Vijayala, the next kings who become the Cholas king, always try to expand the region. Now the Pandyan and the Palwa territories to the south and north become a part of this kingdom because of continuous struggle and continuous effort of the successors of Vijayala king. One of the most famous or powerful Chola ruler was Raja Raja I. He expanded his control. He reorganized the administration of the empire. Raja Raja's son, that is Rajendra I, he continued his policies and even raided the Ganga Valley in the northern part. So from the south, Rajendra I extended the territory and tried to extend the territory from southern part up to the northern part. Sri Lanka and Southeast Asia by developing a navy for this expedition. So mostly Sri Lanka area is not connected by land. So this Rajendra I, he wanted to extend his empire to till Sri Lanka. So he made a special navy force for his expedition. So students, here on the screen, you can see the Chola dynasty, that is the trade routes, the Chola territories in the blue color and the slightly purple color areas. You can see that these areas were influenced by the Chola dynasties, means they were tried to be captured in somehow and they were influenced by the Chola dynasty. Have a look here. Kanchipuram, Tanjavur, Gaikonda, Cholapuram, Sri Lanka. You can see here, and the Western Chalukyas there in the grey color. So in this way, the Chola dynasty was the most powerful dynasty in the southern part of our Indian subcontinent. Now, moving towards the topic called splendid temples and bronze sculptures. So, these Chola kings, they built huge temples to show their power, to show their power and wealth to the people. So many such temples were built. One of the great temples that was built at Tanjavur and the Gaikonda Cholapuram temples. This was built by Raja Raja and Rajendra I. These two sculptures or to these architectural sculptures, they are a marvel. They are a very magnificent architectural examples set by the Chola kings. These temples were not just a religious centers, they were the nucleus of the center settlements. There was a center, there was a hub of the settlements where many craft productions were taking place. Products of the land that was donated by the people and the king, and whatever the production was done from that land, cultivating or weaving or whatever, was used for maintaining the specialists who worked in the temple, like the priest, the garland maker, the cooks in the temple, the sweepers in the temple, the musicians and the dancers, etc. All these people daily needs were taken care by from the money that they got from the production of the lands in the temple premises. Not only a place of worship, these temples were not only a place of worship but a hub of economic, social, and cultural life of the people living nearby. Now, in the on the screen, you can see a bronze image, a statue here on your screen. This statue is from the Cholas rule, and if you notice it, if you observe it very carefully, you can see so magnificently it has been carved, decorated with ornaments and designed. So these statues are one of the finest piece of art during that time. So most of the people at that time, when they carved or when they made these bronze sculptures, mostly the sculptures were made of goddess or deities, and along with deities, sometimes the devotees were also made in the form of sculptures. Now let's move toward the agriculture. When so many people, so many population is living near that center of the temple, they need food, they need agriculture, they need some development for feeding this kind of population nearby. So the next topic for today is agriculture and irrigation in the Cholas dynasty. So a lot of new development took place in the Chola Empire. The Kaveri Delta, as we all know, it's one of the fertile plain and a lot of water is present there. So moisture from this region was used for the production of crops, especially rice. From 5th and 6th century onwards, large scale cultivation started. Forests were cleared, lands were leveled. In delta region, embankments were built. In many regions, two crops were grown in a year with the help of irrigation. Irrigation methods were used, wells were dug, huge tanks were constructed to store the rainwater. So, students, here in the picture, you can see a ladder type of structure there in the middle of the water body. So in the 9th century, this is a Sulis gate in the state of Tamil Nadu. This gate was used for the flow, to regulate the flow of water flowing from this area. Just like in dams today, we have gates to stop the flow of water. So in this way, these gates were used at that time to stop the flow of or regulate the flow of the water. And this sluice gate was a traditionally made of wood or a metal barrier, and it was used to control the water levels and the flow rates in the rivers and the channels. So our third topic for today, the administration of the Chola Empire. So how was the administration done? How well organized it was? Let us see and let us move toward the topic. So basically, during the Chola rule, the villages were called as Ur, settlements of peasants. Where the farmers lived, that settlement, the village, was called as Ur, and these villages flourished or prospered because of the irrigation methods. Now, group of villages, that is, group of Ur, formed larger groups called Nadu. So Nadu and the village council, that is the group of the village and the village head, they work like uh, as a finance collecting of the taxes and also like a judiciary, like giving justice to the people. So giving justice and collecting taxes was the work of the Nadu and the village councils. Now in these villages, how the working was done. So the upper caste peasants, farmers, they were called as, and they control the working of the Nadu. Now, special caste people were only given this authority. And what was that caste? Velala. Velala caste people, that is the rich peasants, were given the authority of controlling the Nadu, that is the group of the villages, under the supervision of the Chola government. Rich landowners were given titles like Muvenda Velen, that is the lord of the three kings and all. So they were given big, huge titles. Ayya, that is the chief, as a mark of respect, and they served important offices of the state. So in this way, people were given special authorities, they were given special ranks, they were given special titles, and they had some special authority in the state. Now, here on the screen, you can see, students, the type of lands there. So the Chola inscription mentions several categories of the land. That is Velan Vagai, that is the land of non-Brahmin peasant, the peasant who is not a Brahmin. So he is called as Velan Vagai. Okay, the land is called. Now, if the land is gifted or owned by a Brahmin, it's called a Brahma Dea. Now, the third category, the land for the maintenance of a school. If a land is given for the making of a school or educational institute, it is called Shala Bhoga. And the fourth one, the land gifted to the temple, the land donated to the temples for the making or construction of the temples is called Devadana or Tiruna Mattu Kani. And the last one, Palli Chachan Kadam. That is a land donated to the Jaina institution, the Jain religion. So for that, this way, different kinds of lands were there at that time. So let's basically focus on one of the type of the land, that is the Brahmadea. So Brahmadea, the land received as grants by the Brahmins. So they settled in the southern part of the country. Now each Brahmadea, that is the each land that was gifted to the Brahmins, was looked after by an assembly or the Sabha of Brahman landholders. Decisions taken were recorded in the inscriptions on the stone walls of the temple. Traders Association was known as Nagaram. So, a group of traders, they formed their own groups, and this group was called as Nagaram. They perform administrative functions in the town. So, this group of Nagaram, the traders, they perform the administrative function in the town. One such example you can see here is the Uttaramerur, that is in the Chingalput district of Tamil Nadu. This inscription provides details of the Sabha working during the time of this Chola dynasty. So let us see the other point. How did they appoint the head of this committee? So the Sabha had committees, the Sabha had groups. Now how the head of this Sabha was selected? So today, children, all of you know that the ballot system is done. Elections are done in our country to appoint the ministers or the sarpanch and other committees head. Okay, so ministers for agriculture, minister for electricity, minister for finance, and all. So they are all elected through the process of election, but in the democratic India. But at that time, the system was something different. What was the system? The names of eligible members of this committee who was eligible to become the member of these committees were written on a small ticket of a palm leaf. So this palm leaf ticket was put in a pot, and then one young boy was called, and he was told to take out one ticket at a time, and the each one by one, the heading of the committee was announced, and the member whose name comes on that ticket will become the head of that committee. So this was the process followed at that time for selecting the members of the committee. So our next topic is that what were the rules? What were the rules to become the member of the Sabha? So basically, the person who wants to become the member of the Sabha should have his own home. He should be between the age of 35 to 70 years of age. He should have the knowledge of the Vedas. He should be well versed in the administrative matters. He should be very honest. And suppose if a member has already become as a member in any of the committee in the last 3 years, then that member cannot become the member in any of the next committee. Not the person who has not submitted the account, the detail of the account or the finance of his and his relatives is also not eligible to contest the elections for the member of the Sabha. So students, the last topic for our history chapter number 2, that is China under the Tang dynasty. So just now I told you about the Sabha system and how the members were elected. But when all this was going on in our country India and the Indian subcontinent, in our country India and the Indian subcontinent, something different was practiced in China. Let's see and study details about the Tang dynasty in China. So in China, the empire was established, and these people, the Tang dynasty rulers, were ruling for about 300 years. That is from 7th to 10th century. Its capital was Xi'an, the largest city in the world at that time. So the Turkish people, the Iranians, the Indians, the Japanese, and the Koreans visited it for trade and other purposes. The Tang Empire was established or administered by a bureaucracy recruited through an examination. Examination was taken if you want to become the member or the head of this dynasty. So you have to appear for an exam which was open for all the people living in that empire. And the person who wished to become has to pass that examination. And this system that was practiced during the Tang dynasty continued in China till the year 1911 with slight changes according to the era. So in this way, people in China followed examination system. The person who is eligible should pass that exam and then only he can go forward for that election. But what was the difference in India? At that time, people were elected just by register. If you have knowledge of Vedas, you are this of age, and you are your own home. You give the accounts of your family. Then the names are put in the pot, and the child will come and take it off. And then what happens? You are elected as the member or the committee head. So in this way, this was a difference between the Tang dynasty that was prevalent there in China and the Cholas dynasty that were following the Sabha and the Nadu and the Oud system that was prevalent in our country, India. So, so students, we have reached to the assignment section. The first question for today's assignment: what were the qualifications necessary to become the member of the committee of the Sabha in the Chola Empire? The answer is of 5 to 6 lines. Go through the video and write down our answer. State the difference in election in Uttaramerur with present day democratic system prevalent in our country India. So you have to compare the elections of that time of the Chola Empire and today's Indian government system. Write down in 1 or 2 lines. What is Oud? You will get the answer from the video. Define Nadu. The same you can get it from the video as well as the text. Fifth one, plot the following on the outline map of India. Take a physical map of India. Plot the regions of Rashtrakutas, the region of the Palas, and the region of the Cholas. So, all the best students for your assignment. Hope you all doing well. And be happy, be safe, stay home. Best of luck. Thank you.